Administrative Secretary.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Prime here on, of course, KTN News, and we continue our pace with a conversation, holding court with Dr. Nyikal, who's a member of Parliament for Seme. Also, we have with us Wanjiko Mohia, who's a member of Parliament for Kipipiri. We have member of Parliament as well for Dadaab. This is Farah Malim, and also the CAS designate. This is Isaac Maura as well. We want, and we're broaching that issue of the CASs and the need now, as we discuss, for having a CAS Act so that at least we have a capping on how many CASs we can have when we have a new administration coming into power, as what we've seen recently with the 50 CASs. People have been raising special umbrage that this is a bloated government, and we have the requisite also money and budget for the new CASs as well. You wanted to pick up on that, Dr. Nyikal, saying that you'll give us a history as well.
The history is that we had assistant ministers before with the new constitution, and the assistant ministers actually assisted the ministers. Mm-hmm. They did not sit in the cabinet, but assisted the ministers. As the honourable colleague had said, if there's something being done in another country, they can represent the minister. But then issues came, because it's not often that you had these things where you needed the assistant minister. Then there was also, when I was appointed, there was a big problem that some assistant ministers felt completely unutilized, because the laws then did not actually describe what they're supposed to do. And there were so many of them, as he said, 75, so that people felt that, do we really need these people? Because what they were doing could easily be done by the director of the administration. There's another position in government known as director of administration, which is actually second to the permanent secretaries. Now, they couldn't do that because that will be a little lower, so they are going to sit between the permanent secretary and the minister. So they're called administrative secretaries, but they are sitting there. So the constitution left them out. And when we came, we found that we had ministers and no assistant ministers. And so we wanted somebody to assist the minister. But there's another role that they served then and they're serving now. The political role, which he actually indicated, that you want to bring as many people who you are with in government. It's like a reward system. Now, the assistant ministers served that, the cabinet secretaries are serving that. I would say you need somebody to assist the ministers. But I don't think you need 50 where you have 22 ministers. I think that number is bloated because if you look at the cost. Because in reality, when a country is really, really hard pressed financially, you can do without these positions and you will still run the government fairly effectively. So the assistant, the cabinet secretaries will need an assistant, but not 50, where you have 22 positions of cabinet secretary. And then I think with that number, therefore, as we are saying, we need to assess. If we want to go by the state departments, and we are talking about state departments, there is already a problem with the state departments. Even now,
But before you go to the State Department, I had asked a question. Was there any need assessment that was done?
No.
That will actually give us the rhyme and reason for having 50 CSs?
No. And I was going to ask, because the way they are going around it is like every state department is now going to have
three
CAS. No, actually at least one, because ministries have several state departments.
Yes.
So that may give that reason for that. But even then you will need to know, do you need for every state department that? What I'm saying, the lack of assessment for the need of CSs is also linked to the lack of assessment on the structuring of the state department. Because I know that's not the discussion now. A lot of problems we are having. She knows in our committee, we had state department where you don't know, for example, where gender is sitting, why it is not with social development, why recently, even when we brought the gender team to the house, it had to go to labor, and then you find, no, it is there, you should bring it back to gender. So I'm saying it is a position we may need to support the cabinet secretaries. 50, in my view, is too much, particularly in our economic situation now. It's too many, in particular in our economic situation now. 2, we need to assess very carefully how many we need. And when we are doing that need, we should also go and assess very carefully the state departments that were created in ministries. I see a lot of structural issues. But there's one problem is solved immediately. It has solved the political problem of how do you get the people who work with you.
No, I have a question for you, Dr. Nikal.
Yes, I will answer.
So are you trying to question the executive order because that's the one that has created the structure of government? Are you trying to say the state departments are not properly aligned to the committees of parliament? And then if that is the case, whose problem is it? Is it parliament that has not adjusted to the new, the new Kenya Kwanza structure? Because you see, you are dealing with the old order. This is a new order. Parliamentary committees are kind of static. They are either select or
let me answer. I'll answer that very quickly. Very quickly, very simply. Yeah, quickly and simple. Yeah. You know, you cannot question the executive order. That is the president's prerogative. Right. But you can comment whether it is functional. I'm saying I have my worries about its functionality. That is not the role of parliament. It means that whoever was assisting the president to do the executive order, and remember there are 2 now. There was the first one.
The most current one is the one that is
valid,
the one
and it is the most current one that has actually created these issues I'm talking about. Therefore, I'm questioning the person who advised the president on creating the state departments, that looking at the functionality of ministries, they didn't do it properly. And therefore, if the numbers are that large, and therefore we need a large number of CSS, it is standing on a foundation which is weak. Therefore, we may need them, but not 50. We need maybe at least 20.
Thank you, Nika. Let me hear from Wanjiko Muhe before we come to you, Faram Malim, so that we get to see how this also plays out in the East African Legislative Assembly, where we have the CSS, and in an event that the CSS are not able to appear in the East African Legislative Assembly, then we are faced with a very incredible difficulty to address some of the issues, isn't it?
Yes. Dibar, you know, the matters of regional integration have been assessed, and every member state have tried to work in harmony with what happens with each other. So in Kenya in particular, because we are the one who recently embraced the 2010 constitution, which didn't have the assistant minister, we found ourselves as the odd one out, who cannot fill the position of the ex-official member. IALA has 54 members, now it has 60, so to speak, because of DRC Congo, and every minister of EAC is an MP also in IALA. He sits there through the budget process, he attended the committee and all that. So in the event in Kenya, for instance, we didn't have previously the CAS, Honorable Ken Obura, who sat there many times. It called for the minister. And you know, IALA can sit for 14 to 21 days. That means we have taken our EAC minister to Bujumbura, if we are sitting in Bujumbura, to Kigali, to Arusha, or wherever we are sitting, for those 3 weeks or 14 days. So that is really not doable. And from that context of the regional view, then the CAS is very critical in that particular ministry. Coming to the 50, and this is an executive order which we may not question, again I look at it from the committee I chair of the Ministry of EAC. You know, nowadays the EAC was created as Ministry of EAC and ASAL. So we even have the 2 PS, one for regional integration Manenos and the other one for ASAL. So in the event we have again one CAS for this ministry, it means again another state department is abandoned or left out. And these are not a component that can go together, because regional development authorities and regional integration matters are quite different, though they are hosted by one ministry. So to whether 50 are too many, I think the drafter of this idea must have assessed the state department's criticality, and that is why they found the 50 as the number. But putting it to the law, I would go for that idea that it really become a statute, so that in future it is within the law, so that there is no one who will find himself or herself against the court and trying to, though now the court has declared, but it is good if we could put it within the confines of the law.
Faramali, we wanted to chime in as well.
Yeah, like, there are a number of ways we could have gone about this. When I mentioned this to Nikal and Benjuko, they both smiled, because I've repeated this many times, that we keep borrowing from different systems and hope to make it work together. The system they have in the rest of East Africa is the old system that we had, the parliamentary system, which is hybrid also. It was not a pure parliamentary system. It was a hybrid. We had a cabinet, we had a president who was voted for, but at the same time, ministers who came from parliament. And they have that in most Commonwealth countries, fully. Whether the head of state is the president, the head of government is the president, or the head of government is the prime minister, either way, they still get ministers coming from cabinet ministers. There's a difference between state minister, a cabinet minister, an assistant minister, and what we're trying now to coin as CAS. When we took this presidential system, which is the American system, and called them secretaries, cabinet secretaries, we should have borrowed that system, lock, stock, and barrel, by bringing in assistant secretaries to assist the cabinet minister. I'm sure you remember Jendai Fraser, you remember Johnny Carson, who was an ambassador here with us. All of them became, and those ones take departmental. They are there as for what do you call it in our case? What do you call them right now?
Yes.
CS, no, the different...
the state departments?
No.
Directors?
No, all these different permanent secretaries right now.
Principal secretary.
We state departments. We call them state departments. Yeah. State departments. And in the US, which we borrowed, has state departments also. There's assistant secretary for Africa.
Even that we have borrowed.
For Asia and Pacific. For Europe. For all that. Now, we do have all those state departments ourselves. You get my point? We have them. So
we have created
ordinarily, we should have called them assistant secretaries, because we have a cabinet secretary.
That's right.
There's a cabinet secretary. If we're going to stay with the old system, there's assistant ministers, there's also state ministers, which is below what they call a cabinet minister, but which take also care of their own state departments, different state departments. Because we borrow from here and here and here and expect it to work together, we have the kind of a crisis we have right now. So there is need for there to be an act of parliament. An act of parliament. Some people will argue that it has to be a constitutional, what do you call, amendment to accommodate that. I don't know what we're going to do. Right now we are in some kind of a lockjam. We're expecting the cabinet secretaries to come into parliament to come and answer questions, because...
what you're saying, Minister of State is basically an assistant minister.
Yes. Yeah.
The State Department minister.
Yeah, it's
below
the State Department.
The cabinet minister.
Below the cabinet minister. And a cabinet minister can have 3 state ministers working under him, because there's the different state, 2 state departments. And it's fair, because a minister cannot take care of all these things. He has to have people who assist him in all that. For example, East African Community Affairs, the State Department. Community Affairs, State Department. You need to have a state, what do you call, a CAS for that. You need to have what do you call, a state minister for that, or an assistant minister for that. So we are going to interrogate our constitution in a very broad manner to see what has worked for us, what has not worked for us, and where we can improve, in my opinion, where we can improve. And I don't see these numbers as being anything bloated, because when you look at the state departments, as many as they are right now, there are, how many are they, 50 or 51?
51.
Yeah,
51. For 22 ministries.
For 22 ministries, for 22 cabinet secretaries, basically.
The cabinet secretary.
Yeah, but then you can have these people who are going to be equivalent of assistant secretaries, or state ministers, whatever you want to call them, or assistant ministers in the olden days, which are each one of them with a state department. You understand my point? So there is need to philosophically analyze that and sit in a boardroom like this and put that together instead of running to. They do it in South Africa like this, they do it in America like this, they do it in Europe like this. This has been our politics, by the way, for a very long time. And we without looking at it and seeing what was the spirit, the object of the framers of that. People who put that together, what did they intend to achieve? Are there goals and their own, what do you call, vision tied to ours? So ours is different. And then if ours is different, how do we then modify and bring it in line with ours? So basically, I think we have a lot to go. And I don't see that many, because there are all these different state departments. And the cabinet minister is going to have a serious work dealing with all three of them. That cabinet minister must have three assistant secretaries, or whatever you want to call them. It's just like what you're calling right now in Parliament. In Parliament, you have a speaker, you have a deputy speaker. They're both in the Constitution. But then we have what you call the Speakers Panel. The Speakers Panel, basically, these are assistant speakers.
Yeah. And there are 6 of them.
And there are 6 of them.
And Senate, there are 4.
I left when we were 4. There were 4. I came back when there were 6. Senate, which has got less than 100, has got 4, which is a good number. But then the point I'm trying to say...
And still, you still sometimes struggle to get somebody to sit at the chair.
Yes. So what we need to do is that let us internalize a lot of these things and see where we need to make certain changes, amendments, improvements, you know what I mean?
Right.
Go back to an old system if you are not too happy with that. And I think myself, we will still need to go back to some kind of a hybrid parliamentary system, because parliamentary system was very responsible, very, very responsible. You take the minister himself, take him to task on the floor of the House. I remember one day in one session on a Wednesday morning, sending out of Parliament 8 ministers and telling them and banning them from transacting any business on the floor of the House until such time that they have come with answers that satisfy the needs of Kenyans and the questions that were put in by members of Parliament. Because when they begin, whistling their way around and sliding their way around to escape responsibility for their work, the chair has certain authority to bring that to order. And those people came back.
Thank you.
You're not allowed to transact business until such time that that question is again put on the order paper and you're able to answer that very well.
Right. So just we know.
Right now you have power in cabinet secretaries, but they have no responsibility. What do you do to a cabinet secretary who's not performing now?
Indeed. That's why I wanted to latch on this question. That now we have the amendment of standing orders, that is, with the cabinet secretaries that can appear before the plenary, isn't it? Yeah. That has been amended. Done. Yeah. What happens now to the CSs? In case where we have a CS who's, let's say, is indisposed, he cannot really appear, and we need someone to appear before the plenary. Are we also caught in a quagmire, because also that has not been captured by any amendment, any acts? So we are still in the same limbo that we were before.
Let me have the first bite of the cherry on that one. First and foremost, you can hear we are still struggling with the old order of whether we are parliamentary, or presidential, or we are a mongrel. There's something in between.
Or a hybrid.
Let me call it a mongrel for the sake of advancing the argument.
A mongrel is a bit derogatory.
No.
You're an amoeba.
Because you
He's
see
taking any shape
or a hydra.
Exactly. Or a hydra.
We are missing even the leader of official opposition in Parliament. Our kind of society, leaders really are elected to resolve problems. So, official leader of opposition, for example, in my humble submission, should have been in Parliament, because he leads the people so that he can argue things on the floor. Now, we went pure presidential, then they have a better way of managing leaders who don't get elected as president. I think some of them would go back to become senators, but here they are just out there. Now, coming to the issue of how it works out, we are recreating the Prime Minister's question time, in a way. In terms of like the way it happened in the UK. Again, another borrowing from the pure parliamentary process there. And that's now why you see, like for example, the designation of ministers is not on the dispatch box, because those are for members. So where the president sits with the senior civil servants, that is where the ministers will be speaking. But then there's a coordinating role to answer your question, that then the Prime Cabinet Secretary will be playing. In the event that then there is no minister to answer that question, what happens? At this point in time, what I get, and maybe members can confirm this, CSS will also now be sent maybe to answer a question in a committee, to maybe there's a retreat somewhere and the people are doing a report. That's what we were seeing, many of them in the previous regime doing it, the previous administration doing it. So they still have a role because apart from the prime time, if you can call it that way, where you come to the floor of the House and you have 3 hours of members of Parliament asking questions to ministers, they still are most 60%, if not 70%, of the work of Parliament is done in committees. And so, of course, you need so many people because sometimes you'll have the same minister needing to appear in several committees that are meeting at the same time. And remember, now we have 2 chambers of Parliament. So that kind of thing then requires a lot of work to be done by the CSS.
Yeah. Right.
Let me just. I want to start from where Honorable Farah
But
philosophy.
No. Let's not go. I wanted just to get a clarity also on what I'd asked, in case that the CSS isn't disposed, and you have to appear before the plenary. Do we have a framework, legislative-wise, that really allows the CS to do this?
I don't think the CSS may appear before the plenary at this point in time because the standing orders did not recognize the CSS.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
But then the Prime Cabinet Secretary, remember there's a Prime Cabinet Secretary, can assign another minister to answer that question, or himself he answers on behalf of government. You get? So really it doesn't quite mean that there is a lacuna there. But a CAS...
That's what we've accommodated in our standing orders now.
It's accommodated.
We have just done, I don't think, it still has to go through a process, but we have done it in Parliament.
For the CSs,
no, CS does not appear anyway. CS.
That's what I'm asking. For the CSs, in case now he's saying that the prime...
Ordinarily, even in our case in the parliamentary system we had before, when the minister is not there, the assistant minister will be there. Now, because they are the assistant ministers, even in our case, I think Parliament was feeling that.
But Farah, yes, there was a law that actually supported the assistant minister to appear.
Yes.
We don't have a law that actually supports the CSS to appear before plenary. That's my question.
That's the law we have just done.
So let me
as per the standing orders. Sorry.
Only the minister will appear.
No.
Yes. Not a CS.
It's a yes or no question.
Only
the
yes or no
CAS
question.
will not appear. It is the ministers will appear.
Who will appear, yes.
Only.
So
yes.
That's why I asked you if the minister, in case he's indisposed.
Yes. Another minister.
No, I think the question
Then
will be
who
deferred.
will appear?
Let me come in here. Yeah. You know, he summarized it all, and we are leaders, and let's just face it. We don't go into the philosophy that then drives our structure. We are pragmatic, and our pragmatism is driven by basically 2 factors: corruption and tribe in the application of power. So that we start to look at this thing, if we put it at this time, how will it help us? And that is why we quickly say, at this point, one do this, then the next thing we want to do this. If we had a philosophy that was underlying all this, philosophy will even drive us from the material benefits, it will even drive us from clan or tribe politics. And so what then we do? We borrow things. Even this thing of CS appearing, CASs are somewhere we have to look at it, and now the Prime Cabinet Secretary. Let's just look at the issue of a question which is going to Parliament, and then we have committee. Now, we haven't put a structure that will say which question will be answered
by the committee chair
in the committee,
and
which question will come to the minister sitting. The minister is not sitting in the plenary, he's sitting in some corner, which allows the constitution allows him to sit in that corner where civil servants sit, because he can't sit in the plenary.
But he's not a member. He's before the plenary.
He's before the plenary.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But and
the
then,
privilege of being an MP.
And then, which question will be asked by the Prime
Cabinet Secretary?
Because even the Prime Cabinet Secretary, we haven't thought about it seriously, structurally. We thought about it because you have 3 people who are your main supporters. Now you are in government. Each one has to take something. So you say, okay, Prime Secretary. You don't go down and say, okay, when the Prime Cabinet Secretary comes, how does he relate to the other structures? For example, I don't know now what the prime cabinet secretary does. Does he call a meeting of all the cabinet secretaries?
Yes, he has that power.
Yeah, he has that power to do that. So is there like a mini cabinet, or is it a cabinet committee?
Which is
It's
through,
a coordinator
which is
for
through an
parliamentary
executive
affairs.
order.
And two, there is also the cabinet. The cabinet is, listen, the cabinet is chaired by the president, and is chairing cabinet secretaries. This prime cabinet secretary, when he's chairing these other cabinet secretaries, is it a committee? But the point is, we didn't think the whole matter through.
Absolutely.
And why don't we think the whole matter through? Yeah. We want to solve a problem so that we win an election, so that we can help our clan, so that we can help the people who supported us. Sometimes we even help business people.
So is it for the preserve? Now, this is the mongrel. These are the mongrel heads which are now popping up everywhere, as you can see.
Call it a hydra.
It's a hydra completely.
Absolutely.
So if
you will have a problem taming each one of them. You know, hydra has got all these many tentacles. When one grabs you, there's another one which is going to grab you. You can cut off one. There's still
all these tentacles all over.
Actually, hydra
seriously.
So this has been my position myself from the beginning. For the last 15 years.
This is the wisdom hour.
This is the wisdom hour.
But
The bad hour.
But because we wanted to imitate the British so much. First of all, we started calling our Prime Minister the Right Honourable. I don't know where we got the RT from. You know what the RT is? Ordinarily, historically, RT was the Prime Minister who was knighted by the Queen or the King. And then we took that one. And then we decided to create what we call Prime Minister's Hour in our own...
Under the Grand Coalition.
Under the Grand Coalition.
Coping what happens in
in the UK. And then we decided, no, there was a problem also because there was a big fallout within ODM. ODM, when we went there, you know, there was an assumption that Raila had betrayed the Kalenjins, and that's why so many young Kalenjins were languishing in prison, and at some stage he went now to bed fully with them on Kenya, and then of course that issue happened. So when the Parliamentary Select Committee went to Naivasha, the Rift Valley wanted devolution based on all the provinces, with a bit of here and there. The Central Mountain did not want anything to do with devolution. They did not want that kind of thing. They wanted a district focus thing. We as what do you call ODM was split down the middle. We wanted a pure parliamentary system. A pure parliamentary system with a prime minister being the head of government and have a ceremonial president. Now, the mountain and the Rift Valley went together. Both of them to defeat the pure parliamentary system, go for the presidency. But the mountain also got what they wanted. Instead of having those big provinces, we now have counties, which is just the former districts. You know what I mean?
The former districts.
Yeah, development, you know. District focus, development, whatever it was.
That's why there's 47.
That's why we have 47. So the political expediency of the moment is what got us to where we are now.
We overdevolved.
We overdevolved, and then we went for C as a cabinet secretary, which is an American system. Because we were fighting now the parliamentary system, which Raila and myself and many of us in ODM those days were fighting.
But he also abandoned Raila also. He also joined the presidential because he thought he was going to win the elections.
No, who, me?
No, Raila.
Yeah,
and I confronted him about it.
At the later stage,
Yeah.
Exactly. Nana Mountain was so smart.
Well,
because
Mountain
was so smart. He was even going to be enthroned as a Kikuyu elder. You know what I mean? Yes. And all those things. So Raila, for a moment, did not even care about the Kalenjin votes because now he thought he had a bigger constituency. All that they were doing, they were playing games. They played this side and they played this side, and they came back again.
and he accepted the presidential.
And you see, and he accepted the presidential system.
You
see what I mean? So exactly as Yekad is saying, every moment that we had to do something for posterity for this country, the political expediencies of the moment and the greed of the elite hungry for power and resources, is the one which took the day, carried the day. That's why then we come back again to the same problem 5 years later, another 5 years later, 10 years later, 60 years.
Cycles, yes.
60 years.
Let me tell the solution. Let me tell the solution.
Let me just finish. Let me just 1 second only. 60 years, 60-something years down the line, that's where we are. When the Europeans wanted to give us a very good constitution for posterity, and we had this Lancaster conference and everything else, there was what was called the big tribes and the small tribes. The Luos and the Kikuyus came together, and Kenyatta and Jaramogi said, let's take power. We will change whatever we want to change later on. And they did that. But then there was a fallout between them again. You get my point? So all these fallouts you're seeing, it's never on patriotism, a blue blood, serious patriotism. The elite, Kenyatta was no more than a big traditional tribal ruler with the resources of the country. I mean, he was just there in Gatundu. And there are certain ministries, you people are young, he remembers himself. There are certain ministries, when you go there, even the cabinet, what they call the ministerial high-level discussions used to be conducted in Kikuyu. Minister of Foreign Affairs was one of those ones. You get my point? And then the need, of course, get rid of them, let's get another guy. Who do we now rally around? Jaramogi, who did all this evil, you know, but part of that old order himself also of conspiracy with Kenyatta is just, this time has been stabbed in the back by Kenyatta. So we are going through that one day. That's why you see two people who are killing one another. Tomorrow they're together. The day after, another two are together. They don't not. Look at just the last 15, 20 years.
Thank you.
How many people came together?
Right.
And who are together now?
Let's hear
who had ever imagined that Raila and Uhuru would be together today, and presumably Raila fighting for Uhuru's what they call issues, wealth, among other things.
Thank you. So we're still on the CSS, so that we,
Is it the closing remarks?
No, not yet the closing remarks, because there's another pending issue that I want us to.
On this issue as well.
You want to comment on this? Okay,
Yes.
let's hear from
May I just want to show you one example?
Can I hear from Wanjiko before we
Let
yes,
him
please?
go, let him
Okay,
go.
okay.
But
Let me tell you.
before he
Let me
Before
tell
he
you.
goes.
Yeah, because he was let me make
Okay,
a
can I hear from Isaac,
yeah.
because it's
Okay.
in connection to what you want to say?
There is an issue that also, Farah, we need to address. What I call the Kenyan consensus.
Yes.
The Kenyan consensus seems to say, you, the big tribes, have the presidency. We, the small tribes, also have as many members of parliament. You know? So that then you find, like in central Kenya, people are underrepresented when it comes to the single-member constituency.
In numbers, in population.
The people that Wanjiko Bohia represents, or the ones that I wanted to represent in Ruiru, have one MP against so many that would be from another region. Now, that in itself has actually been codified in the constitution. I do not foresee even in the future, because BBI, part of it, why it was unpopular, was to create 70 new constituencies.
Yes.
Now, when we also over-devolved and had 47 counties, it also made a mockery of the very devolution that we are talking about. But then the question that we need to ask ourselves is this. Is it that people now rally to win the state and then divide the cake and therefore create more positions to satisfy the demands? Or is there something that is, guiding us on how we want to manage ourselves? Because there are different levels at which then we are competing for this power, to the extent that when, like the Naivasha process, when people realized that the prime minister was actually becoming very powerful, they had to do away with it so that then you maintain the power at the center of the presidency. So there are bigger questions that need to be addressed, and that is why you will, over time, be seeing people now wanting to change the constitution because things are not fitting in. I want to submit that we have not yet gotten the formula of governing ourselves properly. As long as that is the case, you will have layers and lawyers of people coming to power and wanting to bring on board the people that are there. Like there was a position called the secretary, that was below the PS. That was supposed to be for political appointees. And PS, you remember, we had Akina, Professor Jacqueline Odwal and Colette Suda. But today it has now been captured by the Ministry of Civil Servants. Now politicians cannot. Ideally, that is the position that maybe CIS would have gone through in this process. But you see now, CIS need to be protected. Because tomorrow, you never know whether you'll be the one who's the CIS.
So definitely,
Okay.
I wanted just a simple this philosophy thing.
Yes.
You see, it drops down until he makes the statement, people want to win the state.
Yeah.
And I've always said in this thing, shall we one day come here and discuss the difference between a state and a nation?
Absolutely.
We are always fighting for the
Absolutely.
state. We've never fought for the nation, all of us.
Because we don't have a nation. Because we don't have a nation.
What I wanted to say, philosophically, if you go wrong And philosophy is based on nature. If you are a religious person, you say God. If you're an atheist, you say nature. And that is what all universities study. You study nature. When you disobey those things, you never get it right. You come back to it, because you have obeyed some natural principle or God's principle. And that is why when people decided that they wanted counties in districts, and they knowing very well that actually functionally districts were too small. What are we doing now? We are now creating blocks to create the bigger
the provinces that
we wanted, which worked.
So economically viable.
So life always tells you, go back to where you ran away from.
Go back to nature. Let's hear from Wanjiko, please.
Speaker, I think in all this discussion, I think in all this discussion, it pretty shows very clearly the hypocrisy of any intention.
Absolutely.
Every intention is based on hypocrisy. There is someone wishing to have something and trying to climb somewhere, and with this, it can't work. With this, it can't work. With this, it can't work. What I would say is that we are there now. We have counties now. We are struggling as a country because of the economies of today globally. I think now even the counties have started now finding their way as blocks, and time and again I refer to the region, because similarly as COMESA we are also now trying to be together in the blocks of SADC, in the blocks of IGAD, in COMESA to have 27 so that we can negotiate more. And I think now even we may speak regionally, because these were provincial regional blocks, that now we may go in these common interest regions, where you have the Mount Kenya, maybe you have Nyanza, you have Coast region, for obvious reasons, not necessarily to politically shine, but for economic issues. So I think since we are here now, we try as much as possible as a government, and that's why I wouldn't be very happy when we have this kind of titles in the newspaper saying that we are struggling of economy, but this is the title. And an investor from America or wherever wishing to come to Kenya, by seeing this title, we hold him. I would say that we have the counties, we try to work how we can make them economically viable. We try to create the cottage industries, because by even looking at the population that was there outside, no one who was seriously engaged in his employment, whether formal or informal, would have found his way to follow this. This shows you the masses of unemployment in our country. And these masses can only be absorbed if we are economically viable. So I would say we concentrate more on what we already have now, instead of bringing more new ideas to confuse us even more, because we only find ourselves being more confused. We try to revive our economy within the counties and join as blocks, and even revamp the economy more. We even try to compete maybe even at those province level economically, so to speak. And then we keep going and give this constitution even more time, and every new idea be put on pack, so that we revisit that idea, because we may even amend the constitution now and find ourselves again in more critical confusion, because we even don't know what is the motive of any idea. It could have been like what was there in Naivasha, that this kind of a group has this idea, presenting it like the best of the prime minister, but when they find the prime minister will have more power, again they disown that idea, yet they were the establishers of that idea. Indeed. So for me, more is how we move on well economically within these districts, which are counties today, but more we emphasize on economic revival.
Fantastic. Father, we need to wind up, but I want to just, because as we're talking about these positions and the CSs as well, I'm always also inclined to wonder if I'll wake up one day and I see there is a CS without portfolio that has been appointed.
CS or a CS?
A CS cabinet secretary without portfolio, or even maybe a CAS without...
No, it's not allowed. The position does not allow.
But we had a CS without portfolio. Rafael Tuju was there without...
yeah, but he was part of the 25.
Yeah.
He was 22.
Yeah, he was part of a 22, but that's what I'm saying.
He was within that.
He was never given a ministerial document.
But he was doing coordination.
Yes, he was doing coordination.
Yeah.
Is it with the principal secretary? Is that the CS without portfolio, or what was it?
Look, whatever.
He was linking the party
no,
to the,
because we're trying to talk about austerity measures
Can I say
here.
something? Can I say something? The two things that Kenyans must get right.
And we're supposed to be winding up as well.
The two things that Kenyans must get right. One, we must be able to see through the hypocrisy of a politician. Particularly at that highest level. Two, you don't have, you're not given a mandate, and then you decide that I don't have a mandate, but I'm going to determine how that mandate itself is exercised. When you elect me as a president, and then you want to tell me how I should run the country, what are the measures that I should use for austerity measures and the rest of it? And you are coming from the other side of the political divide. It doesn't work in politics like that, my friend. It's like Donald Trump trying to determine the priorities of development for Biden. It doesn't work. And it will never work. Are you getting my point? Yeah. Number two, for example, let me tell you, for the longest, the biggest raping of the state was done in the last 10 years of Uhuru Kenyatta. But then, you rep the state, you start with your own ethnic people, you destroy the economy, and the next day you say, I'm a Kikuyu, and you people, you're speaking your own language, and the community rallies behind you. The community rallies behind you. You don't care about them, you don't love them, you hate them, but you want to use them as foot soldiers. And that's what we have been suffering for the longest in this country. Whether it was Moi was in power, or Kibaki was in power, or Uhuru was in power, or Kenyatta, #1, was in power, people were going for the Othings when Kenyatta was taking 1 million+ acres everywhere. And the poor guys had nothing. The Mau children were starving and being taken, sent to Rift Valley and Tana River and Lamu and the rest of them. But they were willing to fight and take the oath for Kenyatta.
All right.
Now, if we can do that, if the Somali community is going to take the bullet for me, and all that I do is to exploit them to the maximum, rob them and clean them dry, and all I have to say is I'm a Somali, my community must be respected, and that's enough. Everybody goes haywire. It's celebration of relation. When you get, it's the town of the Luyas now. Somebody will come and say, it's the town of the Luyas now. We must also be respected. And suddenly you become a hero in your own community. In your own backyard, you have not educated children. You have not done any health services. You've done nothing. You wrapped this community, your father, yourself, and all of you. And today when you come, and all you have to do is to make that sweeping statement. What we need to do is to build a nation, first of all, called Kenya.
Yeah, the nation that he's talking about.
With patriotism, as Professor is saying.
We need to wind up, Farah.
Hang on a minute. We need to build a nation.
Because you're getting philosophical, well, like Nikal. I don't know, when it comes to philosophy, we can't really wind up on philosophy. It can go on and on and on. And the beauty is we can actually pick it up next week with philosophy of the nation and the state, where we are. Because I know
I've always insisted on us going through that debate first and foremost. Yeah, and then right now, today, look, Uhuru was a hero in Kikuyus because he said 70 seats and 60 of them are going. How many are going? 40 are going to Kikuyu land. Yes. You get my point? Yeah. In our case, they told us he went. He put us through a digital genocide and told us that you had constituencies that had a population of 30,000. Imagine a constituency with 30,000 population, but with 67,000 students going to schools.
Thank you.
And the only way I can allow you not to go and collapse some of your own constituencies is if you accept that we now go this way.
Isaac had something to say, then we prepare our headline thoughts.
So basically what I'm saying is that let us not allow politicians to use us for their... And I'm a politician.
Thank you.
I think this is called the third hour. And also in the Bible you find the third watch of the night. And Dr. James Yuka said something very profound. I don't know whether he realized it. He said we all study nature, and that is actually we study God. Now, human beings are very interesting people.
You know where he's going,
Because we want something of our own, then we realize it's not enough and you want to grow, as
Yes.
Honorable Wanjiku Moyo was saying.
Yes,
now, in
yes.
Kenya, we have a very interesting scenario, Debal, as I conclude.
Yes, please.
So you have the presidency. Those who have won the presidency say, let's have districts so that then the presidency remains the allure, for sure. So devolution never removed the allure of the presidency. But then those also who thought they cannot get the presidency, they also say, let us create more constituencies. Yeah. Then those who were not getting enough money from the center came up with the consensus of 2012. Now more monies are going to their counties. That is what Farah is trying to tell us here. So everyone is trying to push for their interest to eat from this state, let's be honest. So CSS are not bloating. No, let me address that. What is happening is, tomorrow if Dr. Nyikali is going to be president, he will also want to make sure he has his own foot soldiers with him to execute his agenda.
Fantastic. Yes. Okay, let's hear from Nyikali. Your headline thoughts, please.
My thought is that we must also be guided by the greater good. Because in seeking the individual good, more often than not, you are destroying the greater good.
Absolutely.
And so we must be guided. And then the other principle is, when you are holding the big gun and you are in power, you have more responsibility even to seek accommodation than the people who may be trying to countercheck you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nyikali.
Thank you. My closing remarks would be that election is completed. The issue of election is settled by the Supreme Court, which is the highest body entrusted to do that. And there will be no sense or logic of having election or competition if we compete today and tomorrow you wake up and say we repeat the same thing. Having said that, is that Kenya is our country. We love this country. No one will come from Uganda, Tanzania and make our country. We do not want to ban our country. There are ways that people can deliberate issues. Parliament is one of that avenue where the opposition or the Azimio who are doing well their job can present their issues. And we cannot resolve matters of economy from the street. They can only worsen. We need to resolve matters of economy and bring the better image of our country to attract investors when we use the right avenues for every topic.
Right. Finally.
Yeah.
1 minute, Farah.
Pastor,
yeah, because I know you start philosophy. We like drawing from your wisdom, but we need to wind up.
Basically, what I'm saying is that let's create a country.
Let's create a country.
Let's create a nation identity. Yes. Let's have patriotism in this place. Let us give an opportunity to the people who were elected in the last parliament. I lost my president myself. Let us work with the ones who are there now and watch how they do things. And we take all stock taking. They don't perform, we take over after 5 years. And we don't bring back the old, what do you call, recycle the old one. I'm ready now for the presidency myself. Come to
This is why we don't recycle politicians.
I really appreciate it.
2027. Let's forget about everything else. We don't want any handshake, we don't want anything. We just want to run this country well.
You should have left it at that. You should have left with your declaration.
Yeah.
Don't spoil it.
Don't spoil the declaration.
Thank you. I really appreciate you, gentlemen and lady. Wanjiku Mohia, Member of Parliament Kipipiri. We really do appreciate you coming through. Dr. James Jikal, Member of Parliament Sem, thank you for your wisdom. Farah Malim, thank you for your wisdom as well. Member of Parliament Adab, and thank you for your wisdom. Isaac Maura, CAS designate. We congratulated him when we started the show. Yeah, and of course yesterday he was very busy with the Principal Secretary trying to put the ducks in a row as well. So we are keeping our eyes peeled and of course looking forward to hearing from what will be happening from that particular department. Thank you very much for your valued company. Keep on watching KTN News. News Diary is up next.
It's nice.